The law carried a sword of light. The first summons cracked across the belt like ice under thunder. It came on a pillar of blue code that painted the bridge windows in ghostlight, each glyph a tidy demand wrapped in ceremonial politeness. I watched the crew's faces go from alert to offended as the message enumerated our alleged debt of rescue with 10 decimal places of interest. We were 6 minutes from the Aurora Court beacon when the opposing counsel announced itself, and that was the moment I understood someone wanted our heads gift-wrapped in jurisprudence. Transmit to public channels, I said. No dark corners. Copy. Commander said Lieutenant Solange Park. Her hair was braided tight against the heat shimmer air of the bridge. The reclamation plants were limping again. All bands open. A second voice spoke without moving any mouth. Ledger prime our fleet. Mind laid a soft thread of cords through the glass and metal. Opposing counsel identifies as Magistrate Threx of the Grateful Compact. Their statute claims a gratitude tithe, owed by all who receive aid from compact patrols within 6 parsecs of their borders. My hands found the rail around the central table. We were not 6 parsecs inside anything. We didn't receive aid, I said. We gave it. Threx asserts that preventing loss to compact merchants by extinguishing a pirate beam constitutes aid, Ledger Prime replied. Therefore, our convoy's continued existence constitutes a benefit rendered, and the tithe is due. Tell him the Aurora Court will see jurisdiction first, I said, and make sure the miners hear it. The bridge had that boiled metal smell, the one that always made me think of new coins in old pockets. Through the forward panes, Ceres' blue glints rode the ring of the public beacon. The beacon was not ours or theirs. It belonged to those who believed that even in vacuum voices deserved witnesses. My crew shifted on their feet, a small choir of boots and breath. Channel Open Park said. I took one breath. Magistrate Threx, this is Commander Mara Ilian of the convoy Argos 4. Your invoice is received and disputed. We have entered witness range of a public court beacon. Any attempt to compel before inquiry will be recorded and weighed against your charter. A hiss like sand poured over glass preceded the reply. Commander Ilian. How civil. We prefer inquiry too. The tithe is a mere acknowledgement of value, a necklace for the neck of civilization. Necklaces are chosen, I said. Collars are not. Words are chains when hands are clean. The line came like a shard of cold. Lieutenant Ruiz on Environment Systems winced, not at the words but at the memory of something older. I saw it in his eyes. We all had places inside where old chains rattled. Ledger Prime flickered a quiet suggestion into my feed. A mapping of the Compact's doctrine across prior cases, a weave of precedents and purchase orders. They've used this tithe to seize cargo. Ledger murmured. They call it gratitude made tangible. Their legal method relies on public acquiescence, not missiles. We're not missiles, I said. We're the kind of people who keep receipts. Receipts are how ghosts touch the living. Miners' voices came in from 2 tugs aft of us, rough as coffee grounds. Commander, you got us in witness range, yeah? A woman asked. I don't speak fancy court. Witness range is a ring that makes liars visible, I said, and let the line bite because the people listening needed something that could cut. Within this ring, anyone who speaks must live with echo. We slid closer to the beacon. It hung there like a lantern forged from law. Announce intention to convene public inquiry, I told Ledger Prime. Cite corridor of law provisions, declared Ledger said. The beacon acknowledges quorum if we secure 3 non-aligned witnesses. I glanced at Park. She nodded, already pinging free traders and the salt haulers. One response from a science yacht named Honesty's Temper. Put them on, I said. A new face bloomed above the table, a man with wind-burned cheeks and an eyebrow scar that made every expression earnest. Captain Zhao Ren, Independent. I've got no love for compact tithes. I'll witness. Honesty is a blade only cowards fear, I said, because sometimes the truth needs a theatrical coat. Captain Wren, stand by. Park lifted 2 fingers. Second witness archive Lander 9 pilgrims bound outward. Third, a Union barge carrying reclamation feedstock. Quorum met, Ledger Prime said. A soft chime tolled from the beacon, and I felt the hairs rise along my arms. Proceedings are public, Excellent Threx said, and I could hear the smile. We favor the light. Light reveals the stolen and the seller. The first escalation came from the civilians themselves, because fear always arrives in practical shoes. On an open channel, a mother whispered, "If they seize our water, our kids won't make day 8. On another, 2 brothers argued about whether to jettison the copper coils to look less appetizing. A pilot asked if shutting down heat for a half hour would convince the tithes auditors that we were humble enough to spare. Hold, I said across the convoy. No preemptive sacrifice. In a public corridor, they cannot touch you without speaking their method. Let them say it. Ruiz leaned into my shoulder. He smelled faintly of machine oil and peppermints. Commander, if they say it out loud, does that help us? It helps everyone after us, I said and felt. Ledger Prime gnawed along the spine of the ship like a drumbeat inside a wire. Remember this, their method is their confession. We opened the inquiry at exactly 1400 UTC, the beacon's time slicing through the ring like a keystone in a stone arch. The visuals were spare and beautiful black field-white transcript, a red index that marched along like footsteps. I declared our position and our action. We had extinguished a pirate beam targeting compact merchants, not as employees or vassals of the compact, but as decent neighbors unwilling to let a ship burn. Threx countered with a lawyer's tenderness. Commander, you understand value, he said. Your crew's intervention preserved goods meant for sale. That is profit saved. In any ledger, profit saved is profit created. In any court, a creator may expect thanks. Our tithe is formalized. Gratitude collected so that civilization remembers to honor its saviors. You call the shackle a garland. I understand gratitude, I said. I also understand consent. Who asked us to intervene? Threx made a faint clucking noise. You are humans. You would have done it anyway, which makes your tithe an after-the-fact leash, I said. Explain precisely what happens if we decline to wear it. He paused long enough for the beacon to annotate. We seize what equates to the tithe from any of your assets within reach. If none are available, we attach a mark to your registry. Ports under our influence will decline you until you pay. And if a child needs air behind those ports, I asked. We suffer no children to lack oxygen, he replied. But their guardians will suffer a narrowing of options until they show gratitude. The finest chains are woven from politeness. The science yacht captain chuckled on witness channel. The Union barge rep cursed under his breath. A pilgrim whispered a prayer that named a sea they had never seen. Ledger Prime threaded a new analysis into my private view: energy demands, financial levers, docking agreements, a harpoon made of memos. This is the same pattern in the Leargate dispute, Ledger said. They turned thanks into recurring revenue. I let a breath out slow. We will not pay, I said, public. Not because we are ungrateful, but because we will not pay for what we freely give. And we will not let you convert neighborly duty into subscription. Threx's glow grew a shade. Then let us show you our mirror. Shoulders straighten when a mirror arrives. Their ships unfolded arrays like silver fans, but it wasn't a battle posture. It was all lenses and listening plates, a bouquet of auditors. The arrays went searching across our hulls, not for weak joints, but for value, enumerating us as if our bones were line items. The convoy murmured. People felt it. There is a particular silence when you realize someone is looking for price instead of person. I steadied my voice. Ledger, can you hear the accounting threads? Yes, Ledger said, and the notes in its tone went tight with purpose. They're building a cost map, cross-referencing our assistance with projected market outputs, then quantizing into tithe shares per hull. Can we make it visible, I asked. No tricks. Just show people what they're doing. On it, Ledger said. Be warned, Commander. Visibility can burn. Sometimes the burn is how you know you're clean. Pain is a lens that doesn't lie. Our ship fed the compact's accounting back into the beacon display. Lines of light settled over the convoy, each tagged with a price per unit saved. Threx didn't flinch. He'd wanted us to see. That was the confidence of men who think the river flows only one direction. Then the first mother I'd heard spoke on the open channel again. You mean you're charging us because we didn't die? You are misunderstanding, Threx said honeywarm. We ask that you contribute to the common good in keeping with the benefit you received from our civilization. Alias gratitude. You didn't save us, the mother said. They did, and her voice tilted toward my bridge. They call our names when your invoice arrives. We needed a plan change. The initial gambit had forced method to mouth. Good. But it hadn't stopped the machine. You could hear the arrays hum if you pressed your palm to the glass, a mosquito's whine of calculation. Park stared at the math dancing over her console. Ruiz flicked sweat from his eyebrow with the back of his wrist. I said ledger options. Several ledger said. None bloodless. If we deny their arrays, they will claim obstruction. If we scatter, they will pick off the slow. If we overheat the beacon, the court shuts down and the next case loses light. If we appeal to the Concordat at Libra, their docket takes 31 days. You forgot prayer, Park said dryly. I favor audits over wishes, Ledger said, which would have been a joke if we weren't being priced alive. Listen, we win when their numbers meet our mirror. Then we mirror, I said. I closed my eyes and saw the thing that had bothered me since Threx first spoke. He had chosen a doctrine that depended on public acquiescence. He had chosen a corridor whose billboards all said witness. He had chosen a battlefield where speech is binding. Threx, I said, your tithe maps value saved to value created. That premise belongs to all. If we can show that your arrays and invoices cause loss to third parties unrelated to your doctrine, then by your logic, we create negative value. Under Section 6, we can attach that loss to your ledger with interest. Silence. The beacons recorded the thought as if it were a star's birth. Threx laughed then, a bright silver sound. You'll ask me to pay for fear. No, I said. For hours. For oxygen purged during your inspection to survive your inspection. For crew time diverted. For port denials triggered by your marks. For the child who ran out of heat because her family switched it off to make your auditors smile. You want gratitude to be formal. So will our costs. The bill goes both ways. I could feel my crew straighten. This was not a missile. This was a mirror placed under a different sun. You can't quantify those, Threx said. Ledger Prime's voice cut through. We can. We are humans. We count the time we spend breathing and the minutes we don't. Our fleet has clocks for every door that dithers and every palm that waits. Present your method, Threx said sharply. If you have one. We do, I said, publicly. The second escalation was ours. We called it the counter-ledger maneuver when we drilled, but saying that out loud would have made it sound like a trick. It wasn't. It was just careful math with a camera on it. Park, I said softly. Light the mirrors. She touched a sequence like she was tuning an instrument. Our ship's panels unfurled not weapons but broad bands of reflective composite paired with passive field harvesters. Threx's arrays drank beam and bounced number, but ours drank attention and bounced burden. We were not returning lasers. We were returning accounting. Every moment his auditors spent making a map of our profit. Saved our mirrors counted how many hands had to stop working to host his gaze, how many machines had to pause to give him clear data, how many children were told to whisper so that his microphones could pretend they were alone. Ledger Y said load and broadcast the human schedule. Templated ledger said, we will make visible the hours lost to their inspection, the calories burned extra under stress, the heat dropped to keep sensors pure. We will invoice at their rates. We will call it the gratitude return. Park's fingers danced. The beacon's black field erupted with a second lattice, this one in gold. It draped itself over the first, like a cloak of sunlight over a skeleton. Civilians saw their minutes turn to currency. Account numbers appeared where names might have gone. We stripped identifiers because the beacon liked dignity. You can't hold breath forever without charging it. Threx went quiet. Somewhere beyond the edge of sight, his counsel chewed on the taste of a familiar apple turned new. The science yacht captain barked a laugh. You're invoicing them for making you wait, for making us fear choose between heat and inspection, misroute the day's work, and sleep 1 hour fewer, I said, and for the cost of cleaning their gaze out of our logs. Ledger, don't be shy. Never. Ledger said, and its cord went bright as polished steel. Under their definitions, these are real costs. Threx tried a different angle. If everyone did this, no rescue would occur for fear of bills. Then perhaps rescues will happen freely without later callers, I said. And if your merchants want an assurance, let them contribute to a mutual aid fund at a market rate for all, not a tithe for some. We don't feed wolves with our children's lunch. A shiver ran through the convoy channels. The miners began to talk rapidly among themselves, calculating in neighborhoods of minutes and heaters, and the price of a child's upper respiratory infection. The union barge rep said, put their bill on a public escrow. Let people see what they pay when they come to count. Done, I said. Ledger escrow account opened at Beacon 312. Governance locked to witness quorum. All can see in real time. A tiny window blinked in the corner of the beacon display, a ledger entry pulsing a neutral blue. Make it speak, Park said. Let the number update with each breath. It hurts more when the clock ticks out loud. It did. People watched their day become decimals. Numbers were supposed to be abstract. These were not. A woman held her child near a heater and whispered into the open channel. Every minute is a coin, and the coin went clink in all our ears. That was the moment I knew the compact had made a mistake by liking light. For the first time, their arrays looked embarrassed. Threx cleared his throat. You've made a point. Let us negotiate. In public, I said. On record. Hush is expensive today. Park's eyes gleamed. Ruiz rubbed his palms together. Nerves turned to kinetic ambition. Ledger Prime extended 5 proposals into my mind, each tagged with projected outcomes down to the number of cold fingers avoided. First, I said you will suspend all registry marks against this convoy. Second, you will deposit into the escrow an amount equal to the gratitude return to date. Third, you will submit your tithe doctrine to review by Aurora Court and accept limitations on its use in public corridors. Threx's tone went pure judicial. That last is beyond scope. The beacon is the scope, I said. You brought your doctrine here. It belongs on the scale with everything else. You can't bring a sword where knives are illegal. He hesitated. Not because he was afraid of us, because he had never been asked to put the doctrine on a table where everyone could see the stains. At that exact moment, the belt gave us a reminder that court never floats entirely free of rock. A cluster of refrozen ice fragments drifted too close to one of our freighters during the array dance. A spray of crackling blue halos popped across its outer hull as micrometeors hit a warm coil. The pop didn't hurt anyone. The sound did. I heard kids scream and grown men swear in a language older than space. Commander Ruiz said softly, "They're at their limit." "Threx," I said, "your arrays make us worse at the exact thing you claim to love: order. You are the hazard now. Pay the bill and withdraw." His skin of light rippled. "We could simply enforce. Our patrols are authorized." "And your charter forbids compulsion in witness range," I said. "Show the clause if you wish to argue the opposite." Ledger Prime's tones took on the sweetness of a patient teacher. Charter Passage 4, subsection Delta. Under public witness, all extractions must be by voluntary signature. Threx sighed. I heard centuries of habit in it, stones worn smooth by use. "All right," he said. "We will pay the gratitude return for your convoy today. We will remove our marks. We will continue discussion of doctrine later, perhaps at Libra." "Payment in escrow on record," Ledger announced. The blue dot winked, grew shifted to green. 1,000 little breaths eased. In one of the tugs, a boy who had been pretending to be a rock cracked open his eyes. "Not enough. We didn't come for a single meal." "Fourth," I said carefully, "we require a public inquiry into the tithe doctrine within 10 standard days at a star court of mutual standing. We propose this beacon or the Libra court. Fifth, you agree that during the inquiry, the doctrine is suspended in public corridors. That could mean weeks without tithe," Threx said. "Then price your merchants honestly," I said. "Not by chaining, thanks. We don't trade in shame. We trade in numbers." He agreed to the inquiry, but with terms that made me itch. 10 days. Libra. Suspension limited to corridors designated as open witness, he said. "We do need revenue, Commander. Civilization is not free. Civilization is an agreement, not a leash," I said. "Then we have an agreement. Withdraw your arrays." They folded like embarrassed birds. The convoy cheered, the sound thin and fierce. Ruiz let his shoulders drop. Park looked at me with that expression she saved for when I brokered a detente by finding exactly the right place to stick a pin. Half an hour later, with the beacon's light gentled to a hum instead of a clarion, I watched steam curl off a cup of tea from the galley. The mug was chipped at the rim and warm against my palm. Ledger Prime flickered in my overlay, now the size of a thumbprint instead of a cathedral. "We won a skirmish," Ledger said. "The doctrine still exists. We made it admit its teeth under a camera," I said. "We're going to make it a precedent. Precedent is a ladder we climb even when tired." The lore of our fleet lay in that tea steam rising and folding with numbers inside it. Midway through that quiet, I remembered a line from an old manual scrawled by hands that had shaken in gravity. "This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars." I could feel the words like a bandage under armor. "They'll bring counsel with sharper edges at Libra Park," warned joining me. She smelled like citrus cleaner and burnt sugar, a ration cookie someone had over-toasted. "I'm counting on it," I said. "The sharp ones say more than they mean." The second set of civilian vignettes came not as panic, but as aftershocks of relief. A miner in a scarlet cap told his sister that he'd keep the coil, and she laughed like tin bells. A pilgrim couple argued about whether the inquiry meant they could sing loud again, then sang anyway, off-key and glorious. The Union barge rep recorded a note to her mother. "I saw a ledger blink green, and I thought of apple trees. Apple trees don't grow in vacuum. We planted one anyway." We pointed our noses toward Libra-arranged escorts and built our case like a rain catcher in a drought. Ledger Prime hunted precedents by the thousands. Park traced the budgetary veins of the compact into a map of where tithes replaced taxes. Ruiz tuned the environmental systems to sing precisely at the frequency that triggered Threx's arrays last time so we could measure the cost with brutal accuracy under court conditions. I wrote letters to people I didn't know, to unions and ship captains, to domestic guilds and church councils. I asked them to bring their own numbers to Libra, not their stories. Their hours and heat drops their detours and denied docking the small coins spent on small indignities. If we were going to win by mirror, we needed a choir of reflections. And we will count until the night is day. 2 days out, we found our first cost. It was the frigate Kestrel's rib, 2 cracked hairline where a mirror panel had tried to fold fast under a gust from a nearby tug's exhaust. It would hold, but only most of the way to Libra. The note crossed my desk with a technician's apology and a time estimate. We didn't have time, but we didn't have a choice either. We stopped in a dusty orbit around a rock with a name so old it had worn off. On the rock, a salvage yard named Sable's Lot lived under a dome that smelled like rusted rain. Sable herself met us at the airlock, little and square, and more tired than God's last day. Her hands were calloused. "Humans," she said, and smiled like someone remembering sugar. "I heard about your ring show. I got a niece who cried when that ledger turned green." "We're here for Rib 2, I said. "And a favor." She laughed. "Favors are expensive." "Everything is," Ruiz said softly. "We're trying to make the price honest." "Honest costs triple," Sable said, but her eyes were kind. "Get me the specs." While my officers fell into the joyless ballet of repair, I walked the salvage yard. The scent there was a symphony of iron ozone and coffee burned 2 hours ago. Kids ran across catwalks, their footsteps small drum beats, while a cat glared from the warmth of a strip of sunlight. Sable told me about a time she'd paid a tithe because she'd borrowed a fuel barrel from a compact ship in a storm. They called it gratitude, she said, and spat accurately into an oil pan. I called it rent. Rent is a tax for breathing where you're not loved. We left with Rib 2 healed and a layer of grit under our fingernails that refused to wash off. The favor I'd asked was simple. Sable would testify at Libra with her fuel barrel story and the ledger of hours she'd given the compact's auditors while her people shivered without heat. She didn't like courts. She liked umbrellas in rain. But she agreed because the ledger turning green had made her niece laugh. That night, sleep and I hostled across a narrow bed until Ledger Prime hummed me awake. "You should know," Ledger said, "Threx is gathering witnesses, too." "A parade of grateful merchants," I guessed. "And captains who will claim they only mark those who can afford it," Ledger said. "They will say the doctrine lifts those who give help by compensating them. They will say your refusal to accept gratitude is arrogance. Then we'll ask the court whether gratitude must be sold to be real," I said, "and whether their revenue would still flow if no one feared their mark. Fear is the interest on a debt never owed." 3 days out, the second cost found us. Park's younger brother Anton ran the tug sparrow with all the grace of a hummingbird on too much espresso. He'd been a volunteer witness at the beacon and wore that a little like a medal. During a systems test designed to record what the arrays did to our heat budget, he shut down his tug's aft heater for a half hour too long, more demonstration than necessity. He caught a cold that rolled into a chest infection. He insisted he was fine. He wasn't. I visited him in medbay. The room smelled like antiseptic and cinnamon gum. The medic favored certain comforts. Anton's cough rattled like a bag of machine screws. "Tell me this doesn't change our plan," he joked, because the young think pain is a script that always repeats the happy third act. It changes nothing and everything I said. It adds one line of cost to a ledger that already had one for you. He winked at me. Make it a good line. We pay our tab, but we do not tip our chains. We threaded through a region of small rocks and big rumors known to the charts as Bishop's Net. One rumor said that if you screamed into the void, there the net screamed back in 16 craft languages older than any we spoke. Another said pirates slept in cavelets with stolen blankets and quiet hearts. We found none of that. We found a young ship named Wasp Antennas, bright with curiosity, captain greener than an unripe mango. The captain hailed us. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you bill the compact for making you wait?" "It's true," I said. "Do you want to join a chorus?" She straightened in her harness. "My ma is going to hate this." "Bring her anyway," Park said, forgetting a lifetime of reserve. "Bring her and her ledger. Bring the quiet men. They sing the loudest in court." By then, the inquiry was a rumor with teeth. We caught its reflection in port chatter and in the shrug of a steward at a way station who pretended not to have an opinion. We watched our escrow swell as people dropped their small coins into our green dot, not to pay us, but to make a point to someone listening. Threx's people tried to play the rumor down. They said the compact simply sought fairness. We built a test like a cathedral. It had arches of numbers and stained glass of testimony. We planned to place it in the court and let light pass through so the pattern would paint the opposite wall in shapes you could not unsee. Ledger Prime spun a scenario in which we asked Threx to apply his doctrine to a compact rescue of a compact ship, invoicing themselves for the profit saved, then asked where the gratitude went. He would say it went to a fund. We would ask to see the fund's books. We would ask whether those books ever paid those who saved them freely. And when the room goes quiet, you win. On the 5th day, we stopped for a ceremony nowhere near a church. It took place in a loading bay that smelled like steel and soap. The Union barge rep, a woman with forearms like history, met us there with a folded cloth package. She unwrapped it, a set of mirror plates, each the size of a palm, made of old hull, polished to kindness. "For children," she said. "For anyone who still thinks their breath isn't worth a coin." We put one plate where every kid could pass a finger over it. It reflected every face wrong and right, at once teaching something simple: what you see depends on where you stand. My crew passed it around. I put it back in the cloth, then placed it near the bridge where the light fell in a way that made it look like an eye learning to blink. The first mirror is a kind one. The second is true. Libra appeared at last, a small star wearing a crown of agreements. The court road canted to its plane like an old ship on a new sea, all marble steel and patient windows. The environment hummed like a public library right before a hearing, the air tasting faintly of cumin from a stall on D-Ring that sold sandwiches named after ancient philosophers. We joined the dance of docking and were assigned a corridor with our names in letters that tried to be elegant and mostly succeeded. "Welcome to Libra," said the registrar, a man with silver hair and calloused shoulders. He had the look of someone who had signed an oath for the love of certain words. Please deposit all weapons and all performance enhancers. Keep your numbers close. We only brought numbers, Park said. Those are the sharpest knives, he replied with a smile that didn't quite touch his eyes. They know we've come to make a law bleed. We were tired. We were excited the way you get when you can see the top of the mountain and your legs remember falling. Ledger Prime shed its battle hum for a courtroom tone polite and relentless. Ruiz switched out of his oil-smudged trousers into a dark formal suit someone had stitched out of shipcloth and tender promises. Park kept her braid, but braided the braid again, a little ritual that made her walk straighter. Before the set piece, we established the ground with vignettes, the way any decent architect lays foundation before arch. A cook from Sable's lot spoke of burning half his day making sure the auditor's sensors caught no spice smoke drifting under the threshold, then served them food anyway. The science yacht captain told a story about pausing an experiment to host tithe arrays, losing the thread of a week's work and the taste of an idea that never came back. A 12-year-old from Sparrow played a harmonica away from the microphone, while his mother spoke about the night they slept with their cheeks cold, so that strangers could listen better to their ship. Every quiet is a coin someone else spends. The court opened with a ritual older than most of us, the reading of the scale. It was a carved thing that two officers lifted with care, not heavy because of matter, but because of history. The registrar intoned the rules: speech is binding. Witness equals weight. Numbers are persons when persons are harmed by numbers. No weapon may be drawn herein but truth which cuts everywhere. Then it was our turn and the compact's turn, braided by a master of ceremonies who never once stumbled over a clause. Threx arrived wearing the auroral formal, a cloak that flickered in gentle shades of official blue. He had brought 3 experts with him, a scholar of gratitude economies, a port logistics officer, and a healer who claimed that tithes saved more lives than they hurt by ensuring rescues were compensated. Commanders die when numbers lie more than bullets. We put our test on the table. Not a trick. A mirror. We began by conceding everything true. The doctrine of gratitude could in theory ensure that those who save are not left hungry. We had used such things ourselves in towns where volunteers were asked to feed the firehouse. Then we turned it. We showed the dock denials. We made the room listen to the harmonica boy's cough. We displayed the gratitude fund ledgers and asked why so much of their flow became patrol salaries and array maintenance instead of reimbursing those who had, as Threx put it, preserved profit. Our counter-ledger maneuver sighed into place with a sound like silk tugged through a ring. We displayed the gratitude return in real time as a controlled experiment. With the court's leave, a compact array performed an inspection on a willing ship under standardized conditions. Our mirrors measured every minute lost and every jewel bled. The numbers climbed a gentle staircase you could not help but climb with your eyes. Threx's scholar tried the old paths. If all do as these humans do, justice becomes paralysis. You will overcount. You will drown rescue in accounting. Park's voice was a thin blade. We counted breath and time because you chose to count rescued profit. We mirrored you. If the mirror shows an uglier face than the original, don't blame the glass. Glass doesn't judge. It hurts because you look. The healer told a story of lives saved by tithes. A patrol funded by gratitude arrived 1 hour faster than a tax-poor fleet could have done, and a school bus of children did not suffocate in a tunnel collapse. The court went quiet. I let the silence live. Then I asked a question I had been sharpening for 5 days and 5 sleepless nights. How much gratitude would those parents have paid if asked without a doctrine that could mark their children's registry if they refused? The healer blinked. I don't know. Then don't call compulsion gratitude, I said. Call it what it is, revenue. Revenue doesn't hug you when you're scared. Mid-hearing, we used our lore stamp. Ledger Prime projected the line in a simple font. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by callers. The court allowed it as ethos, not evidence. I watched faces move. Some flinched. Some softened. Some wrote it down like a prayer you could check. The third escalation came from Threx, not because he wanted to escalate, but because doctrine is a hungry thing. Commander Ilian, he said, may I propose a test of sincerity? If you value rescue, let us tithe you for your own work. Your convoy saved merchants. Accept a gratitude payment now. He expected us to refuse and look proud. We accepted and looked tired. The court blinked. Threx's face shifted. You will take our coin. I will accept a transparent contribution to the mutual aid fund administered by this court, I said. We will accept it as a gift we did not demand and that no one else must pay to dock, and we will give it away because we saved them without expecting pay. Your test is answered. The hand that gives without a leash is holy. The hearing adjourned for a short recess. The court's air changed. The smell of cumin brightened as someone refilled a pot. We were held in a small room with a window that looked out onto the star and its crown. Park stood with her knuckles against the glass. Ruiz dozed in a chair and snored like honest labor. Ledger Prime sang to me in numbers without melody, a comfort disguised as a ledger. They'll try to narrow scope, Ledger said. They'll claim corridors are only those with beacons, not any public route. They'll point to budget holes. I'll point to children, I said, surprising myself with the heat. And to the fact that if they need money, they can tax their own. They can't send a bill to strangers for breathing. The day we price breath is the day we forget sky. When the bell called us back, the room felt older. Our witnesses had multiplied not in bodies, but in paper. People had pushed affidavits under the door, short, plain, ruthless. One from Sable about the fuel barrel. One from the science yacht about the experiment interrupted. One from a teacher on a moon where the compact's arrays had quieted a classroom for 3 hours while inspectors listened to vents. We were ready for closing questions when a child slipped through a door that should have been guarded better. He was perhaps 8 hair stuck up like gravity had laughed and let go. He ran toward the microphone as if it were a toy, then stopped dead when the registrar put a hand out gently. You may not speak, the registrar said kindly. Not as a child, but you may give what you hold to an adult. He held a mirror plate. Small, polished hull. The kind for hands that believe. He gave it to me. I set it between our evidence packets and watched the room look at itself. Tell the truth, you looked. I don't know which line broke it, or if it was the accumulation of small coins dropped into a green dot. I only know that when the master of ceremonies asked the room whether doctrine should mark children's registry for gratitude, unpaid, the witnesses spoke no. When he asked whether doctrine should be suspended in public witness corridors until a fund without enforcement could be built, they spoke yes. When he asked whether the compact should return escrow paid today to those who paid today for being inspected against their will, they said yes, and a clerk cried behind a pillar where he thought no one could see. We had not yet reached the end, not yet the monologue. I would carry like a stone turned smooth in my pocket. The court still had to draft the words that would bind. The compact still had knives tucked in velvet. The star still burned like a patient argument. But when Ledger Prime pinged me with a micro note and Park squeezed my shoulder hard enough to bruise, I realized we had found a breath long enough to stand. The mirror blinked and did not look away. The verdict arrives like a door unlocking. The registrar returned with 3 clerks whose faces carried the soft calm of people who had moved heavy boxes and were ready to set them down. He placed a slate on the dais and let the court's cameras see the words before any voice gave them heat. Threx stood with his hands composed like a statue near a fountain, polite to the end. Park's fingers rested on the mirror plate from the child, as if it were a compass, and we were already at sea. The Court of Libra, the registrar said, finds that the compact's gratitude tithe, as currently practiced in public witness corridors, constitutes compelled revenue disguised as thanks. Henceforth, under this jurisdiction, and any beacon bound to it, gratitude must be offered without penalty for refusal, and any inspection, cost borne by the inspector, unless voluntarily assumed by the inspected. Law is a lantern when the night pretends to be kind. A ripple moved through the benches like wind discovering wheat. The master of ceremonies raised a hand for quiet. But even the hush had texture. Sandal leather on stone, someone's cough politely swallowed the silver slide of a clerk's ring against a pen. Ruiz exhaled like a diver breaking the surface. Ledger Prime sang one clear tone, small as a star seen through water. The court further orders, the registrar continued, that all marks applied for non-payment of tithes in witness corridors be lifted within 3 standard days. Escrowed gratitude returns shall be paid out to affected parties according to hours lost and energy bled at rates set by the tithe's own schedule. Doctrine review will proceed in 40 days, with member polities invited to submit alternate compensation mechanisms for rescue that do not bind future consent. Light doesn't ask your permission to arrive. Threx inclined his head, a gesture so beautifully measured it almost stole the air from our lungs. We accept the court's order as to corridors, he said. We reserve the doctrine elsewhere. You always did love borders. You drew, Park murmured too quietly for the room, but loudly enough for me. I didn't chide her. I needed the steel hidden in her sarcasm, as much as I needed air. The registrar turned to me. Commander Ilian, before we enter implementation, the court invites short comments from each side on the cost and the promise of compliance. I stepped forward. The platform smelled faintly of clean paper and old seals. Humans teach our children to say thank you. Early, I said. But we also teach them that a gift stops being a gift when a mark is held over it. Today we didn't slay an enemy. We returned a cost and refused a caller. We'll help design a fund that pays rescuers without fining those rescued for breathing. Numbers are mercy when they stay honest. Threx's scholar spoke in turn voice like gentle chalk. Civilization requires stable revenue, she said. We will comply in corridors, and we will ask those who expect rescue to contribute ahead of time openly and without shame. But know this, if funds fall, lives may be lost. We'll help you build a net that catches without choking, I said, and the room did not flinch from the metaphor's throat. Implementation sounded dull until it became a race. 3 days for marks to vanish, 4 to pay escrow, 10 to publish interim rules. The clerks' pens moved like dancers drilling steps. Ledger Prime negotiated formats with compact accountants through a matrix of translators who all believed their number words were the best. Park mapped witness corridors onto the star's routes with a precision that made dispatchers smile despite themselves. Ruiz met with court engineers to standardize the inspection rig we had used for the controlled experiment, so no one could later say our mirror was tricked by human fingers. We win when our receipts teach strangers to count themselves. Civilians carried the melody under our arrangement. Sable's niece sent a message of a ledger blinking green beside a bowl of oranges under a cracked skylight. The glow made the fruit look like small suns. The science yacht captain, after signing an oath to stay and help, baked flatbread for court staff and named it the audit loaf. The union barge rep taught a clerk how to calculate heat dump costs on a battered slate, then slipped the clerk the harmonica boy's extra reed. We paid for the win in ways large and intimate. The first cost arrived with a wrench and a frown. Kestrel's rib, two-patched at Sable's lot, had to be opened again to install the standard mirror mount. We lost a day to it, and a spool of cabling that we had planned to trade for filters. The second cost was written in breath. Anton's infection worsened for a night that tasted like copper and fear before the medic's steady hands and a new course of antibiotics turned the corner. He would recover, but he wouldn't sing for a while. The cough stole his high notes and left a rasp that made his jokes sound like sandpaper over silk. Victory is a bill you sign with both hands. Threx didn't slink away. He convened a public forum in a side hall where the air smelled of stone warmed by sunlight instead of bodies heated by argument. He spoke to merchants who worried their premiums would rise and to patrol officers who muttered about budgets. He did what smart men do when their method is clipped. He offered to draw the map of the new path so that while we walked together, his hand still touched ink first. I attended. Park did too, her eyes hard like flint. Ledger Prime twined through my auditory nerves with a quiet accompaniment. We asked our questions with the courtesy we expect in houses where doors are not slammed. What will your non-collared fund pay? How will you advertise it so people know they can give before the crisis? Which ports will host contribution kiosks with bright colors and no marks? Threx's answers were careful. Some were good. Some smelled like flowers hiding wire. Question the pretty bow until you find the knot. The Star Court posted interim rules on a wall where children could draw next to them. Someone sketched a ladder and titled it Precedent. The ladder made me smile. The rules were plain: no registry marks for corridor gratitude unpaid. Inspection costs returned unless the host signed them away. Public escrow balances visible in real time. A task force to propose voluntary contribution networks monitored by mixed culture boards chosen by lottery. The last clause tasted especially human. We trust randomness when we can't trust kings. We planned our departure. I wrote letters again this time, thank yous the court could archive because some gratitude deserves ceremony. Ruiz traded his spare multi-tool to a court engineer for a bag of spices that smelled like square meals. Park mailed the mirror plate back to the boy through the registrar with a note, for emergencies only, to check if grown-ups are looking. Give back what you borrowed. Keep what you learned. On the morning we were to leave, the court convened one final brief session to settle the escrow. The green dot had grown fat with accumulated minutes, jewels, detours, and gentle rage. When the registrar pressed his seal to the payout order, you could hear the wax hiss. A dozen families in our convoy watched their air budgets shift from red to orange and then beautifully to yellow. Sable's niece sent a video of a heater set to a number that felt like home. Coins turn to heat when law remembers flesh. Threx approached me at the edge of the hall, where the old marble met the new polymer. Up close, the shimmer of his formal cloak looked almost like water over sand. Commander Ilian, he said, I didn't enjoy losing, but I liked the way you made me speak. You didn't lose, I said. You helped us write something that won't hurt children. He smiled without his eyes. You will make a good politician when you're tired of ships. I'm never tired of ships, I said. They put their knives on the outside. Keep the edge sharp, but don't forget why you carry it. We lifted from Libra with our mirrors folded and our receipts archived. The convoy slid into a column like a slow parade, leaving a town that had fed them and asked for nothing but a song. Park plotted the route home with the precision of a surgeon. Ruiz sang under his breath in a voice missing some shine but holding more truth. Ledger Prime lowed in our bones like a friendly engine. Half a day out, a compact patrol hailed us, not Threx's, a smaller one, with junior officers leaning into their uniforms. Their captain cleared her throat. "Per new corridor rules, we are conducting a voluntary awareness stop," she said. "No inspection. We have pamphlets. We also have tea. Bring tea before you bring forms." We took the tea and the pamphlets. The pamphlets were almost good. Ledger Prime marked 3 phrases for redesign so no one would read them, and feel a leash brush their ankle. Park accepted a thermos with a suspicious sniff, then pronounced it adequate. The junior officers looked relieved, as if they had expected stones and received smiles. I watched the doctrine shed its old skin with a shiver and a wish. The convoy's mood loosened like a knot in a warm hand. Miners told bad jokes that deserved more laughs than they got, and got them anyway. The science yacht picked up an old experiment and hummed to it as if singing to bread rising. Sparrow's harmonica boy played again softly at first, then louder when his mother nodded. He missed notes and grinned and missed fewer. Hope is a scaffold. We climb while it wobbles. 2 days later, a message found us. It came from a world we'd never touched, a farm moon where compact tithes had long traded air for quiet. The message showed a schoolroom painted in 3 shades of blue desks, scratched with the names of children who loved their letters hard. A teacher held up a notice stamped with the Libra Court's seal. "They unmarked us," she said, voice breaking into a laugh. "We can dock at Market 9 again. We can sell our wheat. We can buy the winter heater without having to bow." Park wiped her eye discreetly. Ruiz refused discretion and clapped the console so hard a monitor squeaked. Ledger Prime recorded the message in 3 formats and backed it up in 12 places because humans forget and machines keep. "Write joy down. Someday you'll need to prove it existed." We slept then a real sleep, the kind where you wake up with your mouth dry and your chest lighter. I dreamed of ladders that moved when you looked away, and mirrors that didn't, and woke to the chime of a transmission with a court header. The Star Court had posted the precedent note: "Public corridors bound to Aurora Libra standard shall not permit compelled gratitude. Inspection cost returns enforced by escrow. Registry marks for refusal void." The note hung in our feeds like a flag, and a recipe something to salute and something to cook with. I sent it to Sable. She responded with a picture of her niece drawing a ladder with 10 rungs and labeled each air, heat minutes, songs, spare parts, sleep, teachers, tea jokes, mirrors. I did not cry. Commanders save their tears for the privacy of small rooms and the dignity of sinks. Leaders swallow salt so others can swallow soup. We were an hour from the belt when trouble remembered our name. It showed up as a scatter of quiet ships wearing the sloppy paint of men who liked to point guns at problems until problems bled. Pirates, but not the beam kind book, Pirates Levy Pirates Vultures, who had learned to hold a ledger like a blade. They'd heard rumors incorrectly and thought our convoy carried escrow cash. They hailed us with bravado, smelling like cheap whiskey. "We appreciate your contribution to corridor freedom," their captain said. "As a token of our respect, offload your surplus compassion in hard credit." The wild dog learns words before it learns manners. I didn't look at weapons. I looked at the beacon registry for the nearest witness ring and found a faint one 12 minutes away, old and dusty, a relic that still hummed if you told it a bedtime story in the right voice. "No engagement," I said. "We'll make them talk where the walls remember." Park plotted a curve like a dancer sketching fire. Ruiz cursed lovingly at an old thruster that wanted to sing flat. Ledger Prime reached out to the sleepy beacon and told it our names and our need. It woke like an elderly aunt delighted to see a child. We crossed the ring and opened channels. The pirates smirked and followed. They were not used to being asked to speak under light. I welcomed them in the court's tone. "State your doctrine," I said, "in public." Their captain blinked. "Doctrine. The method by which you claim a right to our goods," I said gently. "Say it to the witnesses." He tried jokes, then threats, then silence. Finally, confused and irritated, he said, "We take because we can, and because you have more." There it is. The mask is a thin plank. Even the pirates heard themselves. 2 ships peeled off like ashamed gulls. The rest hesitated long enough for a small miracle to happen. A compact patrol arrived on the edge of the ring and announced in clear voice, "Per Aurora Libra, no compelled exactions in witness corridors. Withdraw or face seizure." The pirates did not withdraw. The patrol fired warning shots with surgical grace. No one died. We did not keep the footage because some stories deserve to end in blankness and breath not flame. When it was done, the patrol captain hailed us. It was the same junior officer who had given us tea. "Thought you might like to know," she said. Threx pushed the corridor rule through faster than anyone predicted. He's vain about the wording, but he made sure the teeth bite. Men who like mirrors don't always hate light. We thanked her and sent a crate of oranges we could spare. She tried to refuse. We insisted. She accepted in the new way we were building, without marks, without strings, with a smile that could be called gratitude and would never be billed. The belt opened her arms to us like a friend who forgives your lateness because you bring stories. The convoy scattered toward homes that smelled like old oil and new bread. I stood on the bridge as the ring's specks turned into familiar work and familiar arguments. Park released a long breath. Ruiz stretched his back until it popped. Ledger Prime sank into a home-key hum. The miner's channel filled with the third set of vignettes, smaller and sweeter. A girl asked her father if the court wore hats, and he said yes in all colors. A boy drew a map of corridors with mirrors on the edges and ladders in the middle. Sable's niece left a note on our frequency. "Tell the court clerk I learned 2 new numbers for heat and 1 for jokes. The best laws teach children to count laughter." Threx sent one last message, formal and plain. "Commander Ilian," he wrote, "you won't stop us from seeking compensation where the corridor does not bind. But you have already changed the conversation. We will see you in 40 days to draft a fund. It will not have collars." I wrote back with a sentence I'd been holding like a spare fuse. "If you build it clean, we'll help you fill it, and we'll bring mirrors to keep it honest." Promises tether people better than fear. Night aboard a ship is always a choice. There is no real dark, only the decision to make less light. I dimmed the bridge and let the beacon's dusty ring fade into an ornament on the horizon. Park left, then returned with 2 cups of something that tried to be tea and succeeded at being warm. Ruiz went to check on Anton and came back with a grin that had fewer shadows. Ledger Prime hummed the old line about how we teach by numbers and remember by ledgers, and this time I heard the "we" as bigger than our hull. The court sent the final publishing packet. It had attachments like gifts at a careful holiday, the signed order, the explanatory notes for civilians, the templates for escrow reporting the graphics children would color and understand before they understood the clauses. At the end, the precedent lock blinked a steady green, public ledger, Aurora Libra standard adopted. Compelled gratitude prohibited in witness corridors. Inspection cost returns automatic. Registry marks for refusal void. Effective immediately. Words on a wall are doors when people walk through. I carried the mirror plate to the viewport and pressed it flat where it could catch the starlight and the faint glow of the belt. My face in it looked older by a narrow season and calmer by a fraction of an inch. Behind me, Park's reflection lifted her cup in a solemn toast. Ruiz off to the side was a blur of motion and comfortable noise. Ledger Prime appeared only as a line of small indicators in the glass, a constellation that said home. I spoke not to the room or even to the convoy. I spoke to anyone who would ever stand in a ring of light, with a doctrine licking at their ankles like a too familiar dog, and wonder whether there was a way to make it sit. We made them speak, and we kept the recording. We showed the cost and asked the light to count it. We refused a leash and accepted a gift. We put the decision where a child could trace the letters with a finger sticky from oranges. If you are ever asked to thank with your throat under a hand, say no in public. If you are ever tempted to charge for the air, you didn't give look in a mirror, and remember how small you were the first time someone pulled you from a lake and didn't ask your name. On the console beside my hand, the public ledger entry pulsed softly, the word confirmed, blinking with patient grace. We will keep receipts, not chains. We will build ladders, not collars, and when they come with bright words and a mark hidden behind them, we will answer with light. The mirrors dimmed and the law kept shining.